everyone, and welcome to another episode of me driving to work. And you guys already know how much I absolutely detest when people drive like they're the only ones on the road that maybe the rules of the road don't apply to them. That I don't know that they can't handle the fact that they are not alone when they're on the road driving. They just can't handle that concept. Perfect example. So obviously I was at work last night and we had two patients brought in via rescue. Back ambulance, lights and sirens, whole 9 yards. Both of them were in a motor vehicle accident. Both of them. They were both the restrained driver, which means they had seat belts on, airbags deployed in both vehicles, and they came in within not even 60 seconds of each other. It was literally one showed up, bam, the other one was there. Now, here's the kicker. They were not in the same accident. Two completely separate incidents. Now, you got to think to yourself, what's the likelihood of that? Not very high. Doesn't happen often, but it does. Both got brought to the hospital where I work at. So I got two guys who one was in more pain than the other, but after I tell you what actually happened to them, you're going to be like, really? So I start to question these guys, get their demographics, and because it was a motor vehicle accident here in the state of Florida, it is a law that if you are in a motor vehicle accident and you have motor vehicle insurance, that not only is your motor vehicle insurance supposed to cover not only the repair costs of the vehicle, but also the cost of you being in the hospital, as well as any subsequent costs, things like rehab, things of that nature. When it comes to pain or things from the accident, your auto insurance needs to pay it first. Now, in the rare case that you do not have auto insurance and nobody in your home has auto insurance, then and only then does your health insurance kick in. Now, in this particular case, both gentlemen had auto insurance besides the point. But as part of the process of registering these guys, I needed to ask them, when did the accident occur? Around what time, doesn't have to be exact, occur, and what happened for them to actually occur in the accident. So, first guy I asked him, what happened in the accident? And this is what he tells me. He's waiting at a red light. Everything's fine, hunky-dory. Light turns green. He waits like a half second, a second, and then proceeds through the intersection to then be immediately hit on the driver's side by a guy running a red light. Which means the other person had a full red light. It wasn't yellow. It wasn't, in a transitional phase. Maybe it was going to turn red. No, they had a full red light and still took it and hit this gentleman on his driver's side. Thankfully, he was fine. He had a seatbelt and everything like that. Nothing life-threatening. So I'm like, okay, it sucks, but hopefully nobody was seriously injured. I informed him of the things that have to do with the insurance, and he's provided the form necessary for that. He took it, finished signing his forms, and he was done. So then I go to the other guy who was literally in the next bed. Literally the next bed. And I go through my moistration, demographics, everything, right? And I ask him, when did it happen? What time roughly? And I ask him, what happened? He tells me that he's waiting at a light not too far from where our house is. And he's in a particular road where there are two turning lanes. There's one on the leftmost and one on the rightmost, but both turn to the left. So he's sitting there waiting. He's telling me he's legit jamming. He noticed that the person to his right, who was also going to turn left at this particular intersection, was also listening to their music, jamming, having a good time, and just waiting for the light to turn green. Light turns green, which is a turning signal to turn to the left. Both cars go, and he tells me that he got maybe halfway through the intersection when all of a sudden, pow, right from the driver's side, he gets hit. Another person, another genius, ran the red light. Now, because this guy had a green turning light, the other person that hit him had full red light. No yellow light, not a transitional light, a full red light. Did not stop, plowed right into this guy. Now, as he's telling me this story, I'm remembering the first guy that I registered, the literal patient in the next room over. And I'm like, really? Now, I thought maybe as some of you that there's no possible way that this is two separate incidences. They were both involved in the same accident, especially because of how close together they arrived in the ER via rescue. But no, first guy was going straight through the intersection, got hit on the driver's side, and then this guy was turning at an intersection and also hit on the driver's side. There's no possible way that they both were in the same accident. So I'm literally sitting there. Well, not saying I was standing there, but I'm literally standing there as this guy is talking to me, informing me of what happened. It's like, had it been me, I would have beaten the at-fault driver with a tire iron in the middle of the street. Like, the cops would have a short period of time before I killed him. I would have just kept hitting until he stopped breathing. Because that's unacceptable. Like, the light, you have a full red light, and you did not come to any kind of attempt to a stop. No slowing down, no nothing. And I'm just like, really? Now the second guy proceeded to show some emotion, not for the fact that he was in an accident, he was in pain. Oh, there's an iguana in the tree climbing up. It's a big one too. This guy started to show emotion, you know, some tears rolling down his cheeks, as he proceeded to tell me that thankfully his child was not in the car when this happened. Now, as some of you know, I am a dad. I'm a father. I got two boys. If that happened and kids were in my car and this guy came out of nowhere completely blowing a red light and smashing into my car, putting my children's lives at risk, I would have killed him. It would have taken seconds. I would have just gotten out of my car and ripped this guy out of his car, proceed to put his head in between the door frame and the door, and just continually slam the door into this guy's head till he was a bloody mess. And then once he's on the ground, gasping for air through as he's coughing up blood, I will choke him to death. Now you might be thinking, isn't that a little over the top? No, it's not. Because this guy made conscious choice to run a red light, completely ignoring the fact that, one, that is just straight up illegal. Two, he is not the only person on the road. And this goes back to my first comment as I started this video, this stream, is that you cannot drive at any time of the day thinking you are the only person on the road, because you are not. Especially in a metropolitan city like South Florida. Just Miami-Dade in general, and I'm also going to include Broward, where these two accidents occurred, and even to a degree, Palm Beach County, which make up what is technically South Florida. You cannot, at any time, day or night, believe you are the only person out on the road, because you are not. And it is unacceptable to drive in that fashion. That it's one thing if you don't care about your own life. By all means, you want to drive like a maniac, wrap your car around a tree and die for all I care. But when you do things like that, you are now taking the lives of other people you don't know, whose backgrounds you are far from aware of, and you're taking them into your own hands. For me, that should equate to, I don't care of my own life, execute me immediately. I cannot be trusted with my own life, let alone the lives of others. I cannot be trusted to legally operate a vehicle. I cannot be trusted with my license. I need to be removed from society. That's what that tells me. Those actions, that thought process tells me you don't deserve to live. Simple as that. You don't deserve to live if you consciously make the effort to not follow the simple rules of the road. And I'm not talking about anything over the top. I'm talking about coming to a complete stop at red lights and at stop signs. Simple stuff. If you do it, you personally should not be allowed to live at all. Immediately executed, no trial, no conviction, immediate execution. Done. If they can do it in a painful way, even better. And then turn around and advertise, this is what happens to these. This is what happens to those who choose to neglect these simple rules of the road, who choose to take the lives of others into their own hands for no reason whatsoever. You have no right in any capacity to take the life of another person into your own hands because of your negligence in driving. Sorry, not sorry. You don't get that opportunity. If you consistently drive in this manner, you deserve to be executed immediately. Now, a little bit of a sidetrack here. I was reading up on a story. We're having conversations about this with my coworkers at work last night. And, driving came up, and sure enough, there's a story coming out of California where they've implemented a form of transportation that has no driver. Now, we're talking about a self-driving car essentially being used as, like an Uber, Lyft, but when you get into the car, there is no driver. So we're talking about self-driving vehicles. Some companies already have them. The more famous one right now is Tesla. That has that kind of technology. The problem that they were having, and keep in mind this is out in California, is that these self-driving cars were causing accidents, minor fender benders, things of that nature. Now, when they started to investigate what was really going on. Why are people getting into accidents with these driverless cars? It was not the fault of the driverless car. It was the fault of the human driver. And they know this because the driverless cars are programmed and synced using GPS, all the latest maps, as well as cameras on and above the car to scan for any changes, lights, stop signs, all kinds of signage, and the lights themselves, red, yellow, or green, and to follow strictly the rules of the road. Come on, dumbass, let's go, light's green. Idiots. So anyway, it was not the fault of the driverless cars because they were strictly to follow to the letter all the rules of the road and to obey any and all signage, lights, and all rules of the road. This includes following speed limits for local areas and highways. The problem was you had the human drivers thinking they were above these basic rules of the road, and then having accidents with these driverless cars who were just following the rules of the road to the letter in a more strict fashion, but they were following the rules. Simple rules. We're not talking about driverless cars for speeding, swerving in and out of traffic. Perfect example. If you come to an intersection and the light goes from green to yellow, normally your instinct is to accelerate because, oh crap, here comes the red, I don't want to stop. No. The rule of the road and the rule of the light is when you see the yellow, you need to yield. Same as you see a yellow triangle yield sign, it means to slow down. Decelerate as you're coming to the intersection. The electric cars were doing that. The driverless cars were doing just that, as well as following all other rules of the road and obeying all signs as they should. So it was the human drivers. They were the error in the equation. They were the error in 100% of the situations. Now, would I say this technology is perfect? No, absolutely not. Mistakes can be made. You know, maybe a sign was covered up saying that, you had to go a little bit slower. Maybe that there was a change in the local speed limit. Maybe the sign was not properly detected by, maybe there was a smudge on the camera or something wrong with the program. It can happen. This brings me to my next thing. I was reading yesterday that a drone, a military drone, usually armed with some sort of bombs or missiles, had just recently completed a mission and was on its way back to its starting point when it began to randomly target civilian locations on its own. The computer programming, I don't know if it's run by some sort of AI, had then gone rogue and began targeting civilian structures and civilian locations. Thankfully, at the time, it was not armed, but it was actively targeting and scanning for targets in civilian sectors. Now, if this doesn't scream Terminator to you, Judgment Day, Skynet coming online, you have failed. Especially with the fact that we don't have a John Connor, we don't have a Sarah Connor, and these things are happening. Yes. If that doesn't scare you, then you're living life wrong and you have no idea what true fear is till you have something that is supposed to be from a logically programmed point to be 100% in your control or 100% safe to then turn around and go against its programming, or at least go against its user base, go against its creators, its programmers, handlers. Like, that's scary. So you got people refusing to not follow the rules of the road, causing problems for driverless cars. But then on the flip side, you have unmanned drones targeting civilians at random. At any point in time, you could be just driving a car and all of a sudden you get pegged with a missile. All because some rogue AI decided you were enemy combatant and you needed to be taken out. Regardless if it's true or not, you fit the profile regardless of what that profile is, and you are immune from existence. And because these things are flying at insane altitudes and almost completely silent in some cases, you'd never hear it coming. You would just get hit, immediately vaporized, just a flaming husk of what used to be your car or your house, and you're just gone. Nothing is 100%. But at the same time, every error always comes down to human error. Poorly written line of code, a mistyping of a particular character, an improperly written command, or some sort of conflicting logic in the code. Yeah, that would pretty much cause all these problems. But again, this comes down to human error. This comes down to a person making that mistake. Machines only carry out the commands, at least until, true AI or artificial intelligence becomes a thing. But sadly, people are working on stuff like that. So at this point, it just comes down to double checking your work more than anything else, especially when it comes to programmers. Double check your work, have someone else check your work, and then check it again. Because at this point, any little mistake, especially with our constant reliance on technology, could actually cost somebody their life, or even somebody, as more and more people become accustomed to using technology such as the phones, computers, electric cars, drones, things of that nature. It's going to get to a point where, like it's going to come to a point where we are unable to trust simple appliances. I mean, God hell, there are refrigerators with internet access. Why don't? There are trash cans that are Wi-Fi enabled. And that's not to mention say washer and dryers. Yes, technology is moving in that direction. Is it always a good thing? No. In some instances, it is a very bad thing. But depending on the industry and whichever experts you talk to, yeah, the march of technology on would be a good thing. But not if there's going to be these mistakes, these holes in the program, allowing for, the ghost in the shell, where, you have would normally be a pre-programmed machine suddenly have free thought. We're not too far away from that concept of a free thinking machine that can make decisions independently of not only its potential users, but also independently of its own programming. I mean, a perfect example would be like the movie iRobot. From its thinking, from its line of thought, it was still within the 3 laws. However, it got to a point where the machine then decided that in order to do no harm to humans, it needed to prevent humans from doing harm to well. And that's where the logical fallacy came in. And ultimately, it decided the only way to protect humans was to protect them from themselves, violently if need be. So, are we marching toward that kind of concept, that kind of reality, that future? Maybe. But ultimately, this gets brought down and broken down to, are we going to make this a reality now or in the near future? And if we do, or mostly when we do, is, are we going to make sure that we are prepared to properly handle that situation should it arise, or more like when it arises? And that means, again, double checking, triple checking all your work, specifically when it comes to the programming of these artificial intelligences, and having the necessary capability to counter should the machines become self-aware. And then we have a Terminator issue. Because not for nothing, I'm no John Connor. And I highly doubt there's any Sarah Connors out there. So, or any Kyle Reeses if you want to go that route as well. So, yeah, got to be ready. So, on that dark dystopian note, I have arrived at work. So, I will catch you guys tomorrow on my next episode of Driving to Work while talking into my phone. By all means, like, subscribe, follow across all the medias at the top or wherever you see them. And by all means, leave comments and let me know how I'm doing, because that's the only way I can make this better for everyone. So have a good day. Be safe out there. And keep an eye out for the Terminators. Have a good day.